Hello. So today we're here with David Garvin, who's a creative director at Happy Money. So, Dave, you're the creative director at Happy Money. What does that mean? And what do you do?
Yeah. Uh, I'm in charge of a team that does external and internal marketing communications at Happy Money. We'll get into it, I'm sure, but as of up until November, that was a team of four people that I managed. And then we recently just had some layoffs, so brought my team down to just one designer right now. But internally at Happy Money, I'm in charge of helping support the team to have our internal communications be uh, designed and written in the way that we feel is best. I work with our VP of communications internally on a lot of stuff. So creative direction internally is a lot of resources and tools and support for the team at Happy Money. So a lot of that is onboarding experience for new hires, all the way to deck presentation templates for execs or leadership to use or teammates, the look of our default documents in Google and all that fun stuff. And when people ask for where the logo or colors or fonts are, I'm in charge of that as well. And then externally, I work with our marketing team, and I get to be responsible for kind of like the brand of Happy Money and how it goes out into the world, and how it's shaped and what it feels like. When I managed a bigger team that was more on our shoulders internally to get to create that, I also helped manage our relationship with other agencies and craft our brand and what that looks and feels like with partners on the outside. I it feels like I get to. I love creative direction. I like when I finally hit this role at Happy Money, it felt like something clicked into place where um, I like to maximize and bring out the best parts of a brand, and being a creative director I feel like helps me and allows me to do that. I'm not a solo guy. I'm not a lone wolf. That's why I tend to work in-house at place and feel good at Happy Money, because I get to do that along with a team. And even building a team aspect is one of my favorite parts of the job. It feels like building a band. Like I wasn't in a long-term band in high school, but it has that feeling, or like an orchestra where I get to kind of direct members and bring out their strengths and put them in positions to let them shine and do their best work. Even if they're not designers on my team, setting up teammates to do their best work so that collectively we can direct the brand and Happy Money and how it feels.
Oh, that's awesome. So, most of us probably know what Happy Money is. But for those who don't, how would you describe what the company is, what it does, and could you also share a little bit about what you think is super interesting about your company?
Happy Money as today is a personal loan company. The long story short is we used to be called Payoff, and the whole idea was paying off credit card debt to kind of, uh, yeah, free people up in their own journey of finances to allow them to do things on the other side of credit card debt. As the company grew and the founder wanted more and a bigger vision for the company, we changed named and brands to Happy Money. And that the goal is the same, but it allows us to not be so directly tied to credit card debt, and do other personal loans and lending. Since then, in the last year, we've had a new CEO, which we'll get into, I'm sure. His name's Jeff. And now the newer direction of the company is that idea, but at scale. So we're really leaning into the B2B side of things, of enabling embedded lending. I'll use a lot of buzzwords, I'm sure, in finance, but embedded lending and the API route, really, of how to package and sell what we do at Happy Money in terms of our lending process and being able to do that with members, and embed that into other companies. And we're starting with our partners that are closest to us, which is credit unions. And so credit unions is where we get our capital supply to lend money, allows us to get good rates for members, and also connect members to sources like credit unions that wouldn't be able to find those members typically, and kind of audiences outside of their local community. And so the new direction for Happy Money is expanding on the idea of personal lending at scale for other companies and other businesses.
That's awesome. So my next question for you is sort of a two-parter. You mentioned a little bit about being in a high school band, and you mentioned also not being a lone wolf. How did you come to be in this position at Happy Money where you're leading the brand, leading creative team? And second part is, when did you first realize that a career in creative is what you wanted to do?
Ooh, okay. I'll start with I'll start with the second one. Um, I've always been creative. I started, with the basic drawing and painting in junior high and high school. I was lucky enough to go to a high school that had a specialized art program. And I remember from the first moment where it was my junior high art teacher, uh, they kind of had this like pipeline of students where junior high art teachers would be like, okay, you should apply for this art academy. You should apply, and they would help prep students and kind of spotlight students that they felt like could do well in this program. So my seventh grade art teacher, she was amazing. She kind of tapped me on the shoulder one day and was like, you should apply for this, art academy at high school. And that really changed the direction of really my life, because for 4 years of high school, what normally would be focused on not just other subjects, but like sports or other things, extracurricular activities, mine was all art and creative. And so it was 3 classes a year, or 3 classes a semester that just dedicated to art and the arts over 4 years. And it dominated my schedule. So it added a 0 period sometimes and a 7th period sometimes, but it was all art. And so when I started the program, it was traditional drawing and painting, but somewhere in there, the early Macs were exploding with, the first versions of Photoshops on the Macs, and I was in the computer room more than I was in the traditional art and painting room. It kind of linked up with my personal life, where I was building PCs with my dad and very interested in like computers and computer science and that side of things. And this mesh happened at school, which was so cool that it could happen at school, where graphic design was a possibility for the first time. And it kind of took like the noodling I was doing at home on cracked versions of Photoshop in my free time, and it made that something that I could like turn into a skill and get better at school. And so that kind of allowed me to take off. And I've always been I'm a feeling person. I'm highly sensitive, and so the creative route allows me to lean into different feelings that I have to express myself or solve a problem, using so many different ways of doing that, whether it be pencil and paints or on paper, or designing in Photoshop and digitally in graphic design, and just the flexibility to go back and forth and between those really just captured my love for the whole thing. So then, that led me down the route. Eventually, I just built on my career of like, tried everything. That's kind of how I found myself where I am right now. Started in agency world in Irvine at a place called Envoy, which and that for me was like, it was my playground to try different things. I was in the right zone. I knew I wanted to do design, creative of some kind. I knew I liked brand even from a super early age. I was the kid that was like remembering the Pizza Hut logo before I knew how to say the words, and would tell my parents what I wanted to eat based on the logos, and just like the feeling of logos and them capturing like the whole persona of a brand. It connected with me from an early age. So I'm at Envoy, and really
what were some of your favorite ones when you were a kid? You mentioned Pizza Hut, or how did you communicate that to your parents?
Yeah, it was literally like pointing, driving around and like saying like that one. But I think pretty quickly I could say the brand, like I could say McDonald's or the M place, even before. Yeah, I knew how to order there or pick food or whatever. But it was also funny. It's like, I wasn't even thinking at the time what looked good. It just like the stuff that my family did and how that connected with that brand. So like we loved 7-Eleven growing up. Like we got Slurpees was the thing with my dad all the time. So like after school we'd go get Slurpees, so that my brand affinity for 7-Eleven and just that was translated to the logo itself and how the brand feels, just because we went there and went there so often. So yeah. And then at Envoy, I used it as a time, kind of consciously, kind of subconsciously, just to try, like design and creative has so many different sub roles. And I didn't know that until I got into the whole industry and career path. So at the time I was the first designer at Envoy, and I'm doing everything. I'm doing PowerPoints and brochures and business cards, for all the clients that aren't the shiny clients. That's what my job was, is like the entry level designer. But over the next few years, I got to try my hand at everything and kind of find the stuff that I liked or was best at or wanted to do more of. Eventually that led me down the route of kind of being split, where I ended up working at Crochet Kids, a brand that Josh knows too, as their art director. And that was my first time like not doing all the work myself, being at the director level, more doing photo shoots and campaigns and catalogs and stuff like that. I really liked that feeling. That was my first time managing a team of interns rather than being the solo designer at an agency working on a project just to do the production work. And so experiencing that for the first time kind of unlocked something in me. A few years later, I went back to Envoy and tried specifically product design. And it wasn't called product design at the time that I was doing it. They're just like, hey, we need help on this app for Visio that we're working on. I was in their memory, I was the guy that tended to do prototypes and animation and flourish on top of the app design that we were doing at the time. And so they're like, we need this guy back to help with that. And so that led me down a route of like literally 2 years just at Envoy working on this one app for Visio, learning a lot about what not to do with product design and how to approach it. Because really product design as a career path was just emerging right then, and transitioning from like people calling it app design or interactive design, or I do prototyping or whatever, into it's called product design. And so that let me try that route for a while. That led me to a contract at GoPro. Got to work with some awesome people there. And in my mind, GoPro checked another box that I didn't get to experience, which was small part of a big team. I wanted to feel what that felt like. I wanted to feel like, working for a bigger company that's not a 20-person agency. What does that feel like? And so I was a very small part of a bigger design team, and that was cool. I didn't mind that feeling. I liked that security and safety of knowing what my job was every day and what I was going to do for weeks on end. Allowed me to focus on a specific thing and get better at it. I was like the guy that did it was like, again, look and feel stuff for iOS app and Android app for the GoPro camera controlling app, and learn how they do things on like a production level and how bigger teams get stuff done and bigger company goals and all that stuff, which was all new for me. And then that led me to, at the time, which was called Payoff. And I came in through a connection with a friend named Josh Hemsley, and they had they had an app called Joy that they were working on at the time. And it was kind of like a R&D type app team inside of Payoff, where it had its own team, and they essentially were letting them experiment too. It was kind of in the golden age of this, where it's like, to be relevant and be cool, you wanted to have an app that did something kind of novel at that time. And that was how you kind of captured a new audience outside of what you're normally doing. And so they're building this app Joy. The whole concept was looking at your finances and rating them how you felt about them. So rating purchases happy or sad, and then looking collectively at the data back on and reflecting and seeing if that enough was enough to change how you purchased and how you spent money. It was too shallow of an app, and we spent all of our time on the onboarding, but that's how I ended up at Payoff. Came in again as the guy had a slight edge and specialty in product or app design, but more as like the look and feel of something coming together. Over time at Payoff, I tended to be the guy that did the brand stuff for the app. So our app store screenshots or patterns and textures and colors in the app as like a library that we could pull from, so other designers can make the app screens feel a certain way, or the promotion for the app itself. Renders of the app in a phone to make it look cool and all that stuff. So then fast forward a little bit more. We shut down the app. It does not have enough business model and legs behind it to tie back into Payoff's bigger business at the time. So the team kind of dissolved into the bigger company of Payoff. And I didn't really have a role that was defined for me at that point, other than I had worked on Joy as an app, and I tended to be the brand guy. And so I just did more brand design for the Payoff brand and for our loan product at the time, without having that defined as a role for me. And so that kind of started my path towards where I am now, where I just did the stuff that was needed. I did the stuff that I liked doing and was good at. and built a path for that eventually led to hiring an additional brand designer that only did brand design, not a product designer doing brand design, which I technically was at the time. And so that ended up, I pushed for a role change at that point, ended up being brand design lead. And for a while, for a few years there, brand design lead and brand designer, her name's Sally. She's amazing. She's still with me. We sat as like the 2-person brand team under product. And it was this kind of, it was not super awkward, but the company didn't know what to do with brand design at the time. We hadn't had it before. So it wasn't directly attached to marketing, but we still needed it for marketing. But it was also very much a part of like how the loan product look and feels and how we promote and get new members for the loan product. So it was right in this in-between space. And then the more work we did, the more the company saw, the teams around us saw it was valuable and important what we were doing. That led to more projects and more growth of that team and responsibility for me. And then eventually we go through a name change, become Happy Money. That's a cool sub story where we worked with a big agency for, out of New York called Partners in Spade for the logo and the name and manifesto and initial positioning and copy and all that stuff. And so I was brand design lead at the time. And besides my managers and the execs, I was like the next smartest person in the room, or most opinionated, at least experience wise, with what the brand should look and feel like. And so that was cool for me to be in a position to learn a ton from these big presentations, people flying in and pitching the company on our next brand, and me loving that internally. But also by that point, I had proven what I can do and where my voice is most valuable. And so I got to be a part of really cool conversations and answer questions in terms of what I thought. And that directly impacted and shaped the brand, which was cool to see. And then good thing I was vocal about that, because I ended up, eventually we moved brand design under product, moved under marketing when we got a new CMO. That happened in early COVID. That kind of completed my route to be a marketing creative director in some way. And it was a few more years where I went from brand design lead to associate creative director to then creative director, kind of on the leveling as we have internally at Happy Money. But really it clicked into place of like, this is where I'm supposed to be and this is the role that I enjoy, when we officially were under our CMO and under the marketing kind of department. And that's the stuff I was doing anyways. That's what I was leading. That's where my brain was. And so it kind of completed that circle for me, where I was working alongside brand marketers and people, marketing analytics and all the right people directly with our CMO to, at the top level, shape our brand and direct where we're going. Got to build up the team from one designer up to 3 total, a copywriter and a producer, and put together that team. And that for me, of like that aspect of bringing the band together, or getting to choose who is on my team based on their strengths and build that, knowing that I like being creative director. I like the team I'm on. I like the responsibility of shaping and in some way contributing to where the brand is going and what it feels like for people. And then building a team around that, all of that clicked into place. And I was like, this is it. I like this. I like that I don't have to have the full, I'm a freelancer doing branding, or for agency doing branding responsibility of like, I don't know, those just have so many different aspects of brand. And I like integrating into a team. I'm a slower burn kind of guy, where I like to really get integrated and learn and get data from inside the company, because it takes me a while to form opinions or work through problems in my head of like how I would approach things. And it doesn't always fit the traditional like, what's the brief, do the brief, pitch the brand, the rebrand to the to the company as an agency or whatever, and then on the other side of the pitch, whether it goes well or not, you don't get to control what happens with the brand. You have to kind of entrust that to the company. And I have found myself using my strengths more when I could be on the in-house side of things and in it for the long haul, and doing that work.
Yeah, and you're able to do you how much do you feel like you go with a waterfall approach versus an agile approach to building out the brand?
Ooh, that's a good question. the rest of the company tends to be a little more, well, yeah, they're the agile engineering approach, and how the product moves is agile based. So when it is stuff that touches the product closer in some ways, I think we tend to work in more that style where it is like we're delivering stuff based on sprints or taking our goals and tasks as a team based on product needs. And the other, I think it is a little more waterfall, top down, goal based, like what's our OKRs, what's the goals for the year as a company, how's that trickle down to the CMO, how does she direct the marketing team, and then me putting together my plan based on that bigger plan that tends to be more waterfall and more calendar based, like seasonal and year based.
Yeah, it's always interesting seeing, I feel like especially a lot of tech companies that have fairly regular CMO transitions. It seems like right around the time the rebrand is applied throughout all materials, there's a CMO change, and the first thing they do is rebrand. And so it seems like right around the time you finally get all the brand applications done, it's time to redo it. And it's interesting with your slow burn mindset, could you be, or, kind of more regularly iterating and kind of almost continuously evolving and adapting the brand?
I kind of got lucky where the brand, the state of the brand when our CMO did join was the best part of the company. I think it was part of what attracted the specific CMO and even other execs and leadership that we hired. And it was cool I knew that was a chance that a new CMO could have her own vision come in and want to do these certain things and then start to enact things to make that happen. And through some like real conversations about like the nitty gritty parts of the brand, I was able to stand by the work that I had done up until that point, and I didn't have to change a lot of stuff because there was so much there that was more about amplifying it in certain ways or using the tools that we had in place better. It was definitely more about like the marketing structure and team that needed to be set up to do the actual marketing work, and less gaps and stuff in the brand that needed re-evolving or rebranding or whatever. It was definitely more of that like key marketing team stuff that just was not happening at scale. And so her focus was definitely more on that, which meant I didn't cruise, but I could focus on what I was good at, was slowly improving the brand as the marketing team grew and how we did marketing changed, rather than like, okay, here we go again. I got to rebrand this thing and then roll that out internally, make tools, redo that externally. It takes a long time. It's a pain.
Yeah. So you come at I met your founder, Scott Saunders, about 15 years ago, and periodically met him. He's local to me here in Costa Mesa. I always felt like he was like one of the purest vision people I've ever met. Like he just, from the very first meeting, he was like, I just want to figure out like how to help people with their relationship to money. And I'm really curious, since you come at this from a visual angle and you've always had that vision, and evolving. I mean, I remember meeting with him, or I think around the time you transitioned to Happy Money, and he was talking about this work with, neuroscientists and like really trying to dig into the psychology of money. And you mentioned this manifesto that you worked on with the agency. As you get this big vision story and manifesto, in words, how does that inform your thinking on the visual side of storytelling and bringing that to life?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, first off, like, yes, on Scott being a visionary, he was very much a visionary, very aspirational, and that was a strength and a weakness, I think, for the company. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But like by the time we rebranded as Happy Money, that was a strength because he saw something bigger than what we were trying to do and currently do with the name Payoff, and how much that brand equity. And we had payoff.com and payoff the word, and that was what we had. But this idea of using psychology and science and behavioral science and knowing more about how money makes people feel as a tool towards making them happier. It was bigger than paying off stuff, debt or whatever. And so even his vision and kind of foresight to get bigger than that and scale the brand up in that way at that time, I think was really cool. He had the name Happy Money come to him, and then kind of backed into finding that there was a scientist that had a book out by the same name. Her name was Liz Dunn. And then instead of like fighting that, they connected on it right away. And she became like our spokesperson for science in the brand. And so immediately it was like finding synergies of stuff where Liz Dunn's work was more about like 5 things that you could do with your resources to make you happier. And money was a big component of that, but also like how you use your time. I can't remember the other rules, but there was a lot of synergy there. And so by the time we get to this agency presentation in the manifesto, the territories that were being presented and the ideas were big because that's what Scott wanted. The agency was kind of delivering on what Scott's vision was. And eventually the manifesto and words that we got and landed on were as powerful and big as Scott's vision. And for me, it sparked stuff like what a lot of it talked about positioning happy money versus a sad money. And what does that mean? And having an antagonist and sad money and being able to name big banks and capital that, not that capitalism is bad, but capitalism for certain people is built to be against them for other people profiting. And at some point, naming our common enemy and defining a sad money and what that meant for us and defining what happy money meant in light of that gave me a lot to work with visually. And so that whole idea of like even Scott's use of pink was an early thing from the Payoff brand and tying that into happy money as part of the brand carrying through. It was pink because he wanted to stand out and be different. And so for Payoff, pink at the time was like amongst other lenders or payoff loans, there was no other pink ones. And so that was the main thing to index on for him. And for happy money, that pink carried through where I ended up taking it more multicolor, rainbow, bright, approach. But like the point was to be different than other big banks or other options and to really lean into what happy money meant and felt like as a brand in contrast to the Chase banks, the Bank of Americas, any other big banks that could make you a loan, but the whole experience of the brand and the loan itself would feel completely different compared to happy money.
Oh, that's really great background. It's cool to hear the meaning you've instilled into the visual identity. And, we've been touching a little bit on storytelling, and that word gets, kind of thrown around a lot. But how would you define what it is and also what storytelling is not?
Yeah.
In the context of marketing.
Yeah. I was thinking about this question a lot before we chatted. To me, I view storytelling like from the outside and not so much of like what elements make a good story, because I think that is flexible within the context that you're in. Like a screenplay story is going to be different and have different structure than a story for a brand. But I see stories as a vehicle for communicating ideas and perspectives. And for a brand, that vehicle and what that journey in the vehicle of a story feels like, setting a destination of where you want people to land and then defining the points along the way to get there, I think it's really about, it's obviously showing the best parts of a brand and showing what success looks like for a company and telling that to a consumer in a compelling way. But I love storytelling because the vehicle is so flexible with how technology is moving. Today, like a story could be 3 seconds long, like how you capture an audience's imagination and attention on a TikTok is very different than how you would on the scale is crazy. Like of a full length feature film, even like the sub parts of like a TikTok video versus a YouTube short versus a longer YouTube video and that whole thing, like storytelling means so many different things now because the vehicle and the shape of the story can be vastly different depending on the channel. But at the end of the day, I think it's about communicating an idea and a perspective and bringing people along. And for a business, the point is to tell a story that brings people to a place where like the brand is the hero, the brand is the success at the end. And I think the best stories for brands are ones that actually connect with people with real problems that they have. So real things that they're trying to solve, real things that they want or need in their life. And in some way, if your brand is telling a story that the rest of the brand and company can back up with what it would deliver to that person, I think in a marketing sense, that makes a good story to me. I don't like the feeling of something is off about this story, like just as a weird example, like Payoff early on was going against cash for gold, loans, and like other these payday lenders where the alternative to getting a payoff loan to pay off your credit card debt was to like cash your paycheck right away at like one of those shops in a strip mall and get taxed or get high interest and lose a lot of your money. Just the stories of those brands and how those feels, one has the consumer's best interest in mind and one doesn't, and how you tell that story and how you capture people is completely different. So just how powerful that can be to a brand to use it as a tool. It's a powerful thing, even as a creative director, and using story, like using words and pictures and visuals to shape what people think and direct them towards something it's a big responsibility. So I think at the brand level, storytelling is like a responsibility that you should not take lightly, because people's attention and time spans is obviously getting shorter and shorter, and so you just want to make the most of the time that you have with people's attention to have the most impact.
Yeah, that's great. Thinking about the flip side a bit, and with respect to telling a brand story in the context of marketing, what do you think most people misunderstand or get wrong
in telling their own brand story?
Yeah, I mean, Jason mentioned this earlier. The term storytelling gets used, misused, overused. You go on LinkedIn, you'll see 100 posts with people talking about storytelling this, storytelling that. I guess the question is, what are people getting wrong in that?
I mean, this sounds like a cheesy answer, and we could go into it more, but like my gut says they're getting wrong not being true to themselves as a brand and trying to do what other people have done or are doing or they think will be successful. And I think whether it's a individual business kind of brand and it's you as a solo person or a big company, I think chasing what other people are doing for the sake of you think it works for you versus doing what's best for your brand in terms of showing off your best parts, being true to yourself, saying the things that can be true across the whole story, all the way, from finish to beginning and down to the core. I think there's something about, like being able to back up. Like that's where I feel it's not done the best, where if you're putting out words and pictures and things into the world that in some way you can't back up as a person, as an individual business, as a big business, that's where I think brand storytelling falls apart. Especially when you try to copy what feels, I mean, it's all over YouTube and Instagram and TikTok right now, of like the quickest way to try to teach someone how to do what you do, or like build a successful brand story, or have the best, most viral video, what intro you need to hook people with or whatever. Like that idea in some element, if you're not being true to yourself and what is true about you as a business or your product or whatever, and you're compromising the truest parts of what you're trying to sell or convey for success or for the quick win, I think that's when, the idea of brand story kind of falls apart for me.
So it sounds like another way to frame that is like when the tips and tricks being used, they're sort of a substitute for something that actually has any substance to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
And
this,
then
and we all know there's ways to fine tune stuff and make stuff more clear and tools to enhance what is there. I'm all for that stuff, but like the core thing that you're trying to communicate, that's where if it gets wishy-washy, I think it comes through in whatever you're saying. It comes through in the story if you're not really staying true to your original vision, your original story, your original goals, whatever the first inspiration thing, that thing. I think the truest parts of the brands, the best stories are the ones that get back to that.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's got to have some heart, right? Cool. So obviously, the economy right now is a little bit uncertain. Everyone's a little bit just kind of in a wait and see mode, right? What do you think that means for us brand and marketing people?
I like that I think it shakes stuff up, first thing. Like it makes stuff, you have to approach things differently. I think I've even seen you talking about this on LinkedIn, but like when is time to lean in versus not, as marketers. I think when the economy gets crazy and we're in the state that we're in, I think it is time to lean in, but it changes how you would do that. And I think, that's just the first thing it makes me think of, like the ways that we've been doing things in the seasons that are going well, or when the economy and market is going well, aren't going to be the same things that work for us now. And so, and not everyone has, obviously we don't have all the answers, but like the idea of trying things and seeing what works at different scales and different levels, like test and learn mindset, I think is even more important when the economy or the market gets weird, because it's kind of back to basics of like, we don't know what's going to work best or do best right now until we try things and see how it reacts. And so I think having your marketing pipeline and that idea within a marketing team to be able to test things out, to see not necessarily like what story is going to hit the best right now, but what vehicle and what ways of telling that story or communicating ideas is what people want to, or what would work best right now with people's lives. That's where my head goes. I also think being empathetic as marketers and knowing where people are at, like depending on your audience, like this, where the economy is at is going to hit people differently. So if you're talking to people with money or people that don't have money right now, or people are in certain financial states or in their lives, if you're talking to people that just moved locations because of COVID and they're resettling in or whatever, where they are in their family journey or whatever, any of that for me is just more information to shape how you would market to them. And I think this idea of COVID, and there's always stuff people are dealing with under the surface. I think being in a pandemic and then the economy and the market is bringing a lot of that more to the surface for people. So as marketers, I think we just have to lean into that. There's a sense of right now, for me, it feels like real, like Be Real, like the app too, like being real is cutting through right now. And there's a reason for that. And I think finding ways to be authentic with people and what you're trying to communicate. I just think BS is easy to see through now. Like we're smarter as humans because we've been in a pandemic only looking at people on Zoom cameras for so long now. And so when you see user generated content, you're getting these signals and flags in your brain where stuff doesn't feel authentic and real. And I think as marketers, it's the same thing where like, you just want to feel good that you're communicating to people in the right way, that is going to improve their lives and make, solve problems for them. I don't know. My brain just goes to like test and learn, see what does best. But like on the macro level, it just feels like people want real and authentic right now in a way that they know it's real and authentic, and not like it trying to be something else, or it might be AI and you didn't know until the end of a video or something. Like we're also in that weird world too. But this idea of like knowing what's real and what's not, and like going back to that, I just think it's important right now.
Yeah, that's a wild. I've been noticing this proliferation for a while, and it seems like it's really picked up on like the kind of fake persona, or like the AI generated persona, like just building profiles like they're real people, and it's
the fake influencers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I feel like that's like just barely getting started too. And you know, some people really like it, or there is like this intrigue with it, you know. Um, but there is also sort of this cold feeling to like interacting with that kind of thing, and I've noticed, you know, just from starting to go back, you know, go to in-person events more, and there's something like that, this like dual like trend, right, where there's like everything, almost everything is becoming more synthetic, but then as people, like when you actually talk to somebody in person and they're a real person, you're like, oh yeah, I like this like old thing we used to do. um but I'm curious, you know, you mentioned your early days of Photoshop at your school and being drawn to that, and I know, you know, there was similar feelings of backlash to that, right? Like that wasn't real photography, or you know, that ability to manipulate things was like, you know, seen as a threat to.
Scary. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
How are you relating to, you know, things like Stable Diffusion and OpenAI and Midjourney and these tools? Like, do you feel like it sparked that same curiosity you had to like leave the painting room to go to the Photoshop room, or how are you relating to it?
Yeah. With the image based AI, not yet for me. It didn't capture as much of my imagination. Like I do see that route right now more as like a production tool or idea Kickstarter tool for the image based stuff. Where it captured my, I guess, imagination, but also like where I could see how crazy the technology was going to be was definitely playing around with the chat GPT side of things and trying that out. And that felt like the first time I used Yahoo search, you know, or Ask Jeeves or something. That level of power of technology, I think, was more apparent to me, and I could see more of the trickle on effects of what would happen with like just the chat prompt side of things. On the image side of things, I do think it's gonna. I think the level is different this time of around because it's going to be harder to tell what's created by a human and what is not. And I don't think that's the problem. I think what's on the other end of that image or what that image is trying to communicate is where it's going to get tricky. You know, like when the words are coming from a complete AI and it's a video, or the stuff where it's altering reality in a way that you can't tell what is happening. That's where it gets like it drifts away from a tool. Well, any tool can be used to manipulate. You know, Photoshop. I remember I didn't use it for this, but I remember running into the error in Photoshop when you first tried to edit a dollar bill, and then an error would pop up like you can't edit U.S. currency, and I was doing some like collage, you know, thing. I wasn't trying to, you know, make money or whatever, like counterfeit money, but like the idea that in the program it knew within the pixels I was editing that this is a US banknote in some way, and stopped me from doing that. Like, I don't, it's going to take us a while to have those regulations, those rules, those kind of guidelines put in place for image based AI, I think, to stop things like that from happening. And that's just a tiny example, but like that for me is going to be like more about what the tools are used for, ultimately. Yeah, but playing around with ChatGPT was super fun. I love it as like the idea of augmenting or being a side tool in your belt as a creative. I think it's going to make people a lot faster at stuff, and it definitely brings it to the ideas quicker than it does to like making the work happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Ask Jeeves. He was like, you could rebrand Chat GPT as like
Yep.
Ask Jeeves for the modern internet.
I forget the name. What was the one that you could text and they would respond right away? I had it in college. Cha Cha.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They were a client of ours.
Were they?
Yeah, back in like 2010 or
Yeah.
2010. I
It
haven't
felt
heard that
like
name in
that
a
too.
decade.
It felt like
Yeah.
it felt like, because I remember when Cha-Cha came out, it was like a little more in your pocket than it was you at a desktop computer having to search on whatever engine that you were choosing at that time. But like the idea of texting someone within, it took like a few minutes because it was literally a human searching on the other side in some way. But like that, you could be at a party or hanging out and talking about it with your friends. And like, I'm going to ask this random question to a text, a number, and then they text you the answer back. Like that felt mind blowing. That's kind of what I felt with ChatGPT. But it wasn't a human on the other side. It's just the full power of the internet.
Yeah.
You've got to see the South Park episode that came out a couple weeks ago about ChatGPT.
Okay.
One of the kids is like, his girlfriend is always talking about how he's so romantic and he has the best responses, but Stan's girlfriend looks and like he just gives thumbs up emoji to everything she ever says. But he finds out that this other kid is just using ChatGPT to like
generate everything.
Ask how to respond to his girlfriend. And he's just like, you just copy paste.
Nice.
But on the note of kind of future of the web, do you see any interesting opportunities for Happy Money in the Web3 space?
I'm not going to say no, but I think for Happy Money, the last year or two has been getting a lot more practical and down to earth. And Scott was great founder, great CEO, but we're in a different era of Happy Money now. And I think for Happy Money, like Web3 stuff, I think at this point it would be a distraction to like what we should be working on or could be building and scaling. We know what we need to do right now. But like, I do like the base of the blockchain and that technology in some way. And the idea of ledgers or tracking numbers or finance, there's definitely something there. I think the crypto boom kind of was a distraction in terms of the technology that blockchain could be used and how it could be applied, to companies. I think the crypto thing, it scared some people, got some people stoked, it confused other people, whatever. But like ultimately the tech that is behind cryptocurrency, I think is where, especially when you think of like, we're a finance company that is personal lending, like being able to have ledgers and things work on the blockchain, even with credit unions and the tech behind that, and having everything shared and transparent. And that idea of that tech, there's definitely something there. But like in terms of the extra applications of Web3 or into the crypto or NFT space or any of that, I don't think that's where we should be looking right now.
You don't want to give people like an alligator NFT airdrop when they pay off their loan.
Yeah, maybe some sort of proprietary thing would be cool. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, maybe next year, right?
Yeah,
cool. Hey, Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great hanging out and hearing more about your story and about the story of Happy Money. For people listening, if they want to find out more about you, if they want to follow you along on your journey, where's the best place to find you online?
Yeah. I just updated my portfolio website, which I haven't done that in a long time, but just a basic contact page. So that's at davidgarv.in to make my full name. And then I post about my daily weeks going through life with my daughter and wife on Instagram at David Garvin. I've been doing this weekly moments series. I took all of 2022 off, not posting any pictures. And then I came back for 23 and it's feeling good again. I'm re-energized to just have fun with posting pictures of my life and my daughter growing up. So that's been fun. That's where I'm at.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, David.
Column 5's Best Story Wins is for marketing and branding professionals looking to unlock their growth potential. Each episode features a conversation with industry leaders about how they win the hearts and minds of their customers and build world-class brands. You'll learn about their success stories and their failures, as well as ideas for how to take your own marketing efforts to the next level. Welcome to Best Story Wins.